Strip. The word cut through the cafeteria noise like a blade through silk. Every conversation died. Every fork stopped midway to every mouth. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward the corner table, where Zara Nightshade stood frozen, her worn thrift store cardigan suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I said strip, scholarship girl. Madison Ashworth's voice dripped with the kind of cruelty that only comes from 18 years of never hearing the word no. Everyone here knows you stole my diamond bracelet, the one my grandmother gave me before she died. So either you strip right here, right now, and prove you don't have it hidden under those pathetic clothes, or I call security and have you arrested for theft. Zara's hands trembled as she clutched her lunch tray. The cafeteria felt like a coliseum, and she was the gladiator about to be fed to the lions. Madison's three closest friends, Brittany, Ashley, and Tiffany, formed a semicircle behind their queen, their identical smirks promising maximum humiliation. I didn't take anything, Zara whispered, but her voice was lost in the growing murmur of anticipation from the watching crowd. Phones were already out, cameras ready to capture whatever happened next. Then prove it. Madison stepped closer, her Louboutin heels clicking against the polished marble floor of Whitmore Academy's dining hall. Unless you'd rather have this conversation with the police? I'm sure they'd love to hear how the poor girl on full scholarship decided to help herself to some jewelry she could never afford. The words hit like physical blows. Zara had worked 3 jobs throughout high school to save money for college applications. She'd studied until her eyes burned and her fingers cramped from writing essays. She'd sacrificed everything for the chance to attend this elite preparatory school, to prove that someone from her background could succeed among the children of senators and CEOs. Now it was all about to crumble because of a lie. Madison, please. Zara's voice cracked. You know I didn't. I don't know anything except that my bracelet is missing, and you were the only one in my dorm room yesterday when I left to take a shower. Madison's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. So what's it going to be? Strip search here, or strip search at the police station? The crowd pressed closer, phones raised higher. Someone laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that made Zara's stomach twist. She could see the faces around her, some shocked, some excited, some already bored and waiting for the show to begin. Her fingers moved to the top button of her cardigan. That's when she saw him. Hey, my friend, hope you're doing well. Drop a comment and let me know how you're feeling about this story so far and where you are watching from. Some stories are too close to my heart to share on YouTube. I send those, along with little life lessons and surprises, to my email circle. If you'd like to be part of it, you can join with the link in the description. Drake Hawthorne sat 3 tables away, his dark eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Where everyone else looked excited or disgusted or predatory, his expression held something different. Something that looked almost like recognition. He stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden hush that fell over the cafeteria. Drake Hawthorne was Whitmore royalty, captain of the lacrosse team, valedictorian candidate, heir to a pharmaceutical empire worth billions. When he moved, people noticed. That's enough. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Madison turned, her perfectly glossed lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Drake, sweetie, this doesn't concern you. I'm just trying to get my bracelet back from a little thief. She's not a thief. Drake stepped between Madison and Zara, his broad shoulders blocking the crowd's view. And you know it. Madison's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. How could you possibly? Because I saw you plant it in her locker this morning. The cafeteria exploded. Gasps, shouts, the clatter of dropped phones and overturned chairs. Madison's face went white, then red, then white again. You're lying, she sputtered, but her voice lacked conviction. Drake pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward the crowd. On the display was a video, clearly showing Madison opening Zara's locker and sliding something inside. Security cameras aren't just in the hallways, Madison. They're in the alcoves, too. The crowd began to turn, whispers shifting from cruel anticipation to shocked outrage. Madison looked around desperately, seeing her social empire crumbling in real time. "This isn't over," she hissed at Zara, before pushing through the crowd and fleeing the cafeteria, her entourage scrambling behind her. Drake turned to Zara, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they held secrets she couldn't begin to guess. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Zara nodded, not trusting her voice. Her hands were still shaking, adrenaline coursing through her system like electricity. "Good." He glanced around at the dispersing crowd, then back at her. "Because that was just the beginning." "What do you mean?" Drake stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy that probably cost more than her monthly food budget. "I mean, Madison Ashworth doesn't give up easily, and neither do the people who put her up to this." "Put her up to it?" Zara's head was spinning. "I don't understand." "You will." Drake's expression softened. "Trust me, Zara. You're going to understand everything very soon." He turned to walk away, then paused and looked back over his shoulder. "By the way," he said, loud enough for the remaining students to hear, "nice necklace." Zara's hand flew to her throat, where a delicate chain held a simple silver pendant, the only piece of jewelry she owned, a gift from her late mother. It wasn't worth more than $20, but Drake was looking at it like it contained the secrets of the universe. As he disappeared into the crowd, leaving her standing alone in the aftermath of her near humiliation, Zara felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Something was happening here. Something bigger than Madison's cruelty or Drake's intervention. And somehow, impossibly, it all seemed to center on her. The poor girl nobody was supposed to notice. 3 hours later, Zara sat in her cramped dorm room, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above her desk. The same face that had looked back at her every morning for 18 years, unremarkable brown eyes, dark hair that never seemed to hold a style for more than an hour, features that her mother had always called interesting, in that way that meant not traditionally beautiful, but we love you anyway. Her mother. The thought sent a familiar ache through her chest. Zara Nightshade had been dead for 3 years, taken by cancer that spread too fast and cost too much to fight. She died in a county hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and broken dreams, holding Zara's hand and whispering promises that everything would be okay. "You're stronger than you know, Mija," she'd said in those final moments. "Stronger than any of them will ever be. Remember that when the time comes." Zara had never understood what she meant. Elena had been a hotel housekeeper, working double shifts to keep food on the table and clothes on Zara's back. She'd been kind and loving and endlessly optimistic, but she hadn't been cryptic. She'd certainly never talked about mysterious times that were coming. Until the end, a knock at the door interrupted her brooding. Zara opened it to find her roommate, Lily Chun, standing in the hallway with an expression that mixed concern with barely contained excitement. "Oh my God, Zara, everyone's talking about what happened in the cafeteria. Are you okay?" Lily pushed into the room without waiting for an invitation, her designer handbag hitting the floor with a thud. "I can't believe Madison tried to frame you for stealing. And Drake Hawthorne. Did you see the way he looked at you? Like he knew something nobody else did." Zara closed the door and leaned against it. Lily had been her roommate for 3 years, assigned by some cosmic joke that put the scholarship kid with one of Whitmore's wealthiest students. Lily's father owned half the tech companies in Silicon Valley, but somehow she and Zara had become genuine friends. Or so Zara had thought. "Lily, can I ask you something?" "Of course, babe. Anything." "Have you ever told anyone about my background? About my mom, or where I came from, or—" Zara gestured vaguely at their room, which was clearly divided between Lily's side, decorated with expensive art and gadgets, and Zara's side, functional and sparse. Lily's face went through a series of micro-expressions too quick to parse. "What kind of question is that? You're my best friend. I would never betray your confidence. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just trying to understand how Madison knew so much about me. She mentioned things, specific things about my scholarship, my mom's job, that I've only told you." Lily sat down heavily on her bed, her perfectly straightened hair falling across her face like a curtain. For a long moment, she was quiet. Then, so softly Zara almost didn't hear it. I'm sorry. The words hit like a slap. What? I'm so sorry, Zara. I never meant for it to go this far. Lily looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. Madison, she has something on my family. Something that could destroy my father's business, ruin everything we've worked for. She said if I told her a few things about you, just background information, she'd keep it quiet. Zara felt the room spin around her. Background information for what? I don't know. She said it was for a sociology project, something about economic diversity at elite schools. It sounded harmless. I gave her some basic facts about your mom, your scholarship status, nothing that seemed important. Lily stood up, reaching toward Zara with desperate hands. I had no idea she was planning to use it against you. I swear if I'd known. You would have what? Not betrayed me. Zara's voice was deadly quiet. Or just found a better way to do it. That's not fair. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. My family's reputation. Your family's reputation? Zara laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your father is worth $900 million. My mother cleaned hotel rooms until she died of cancer we couldn't afford to treat. But sure, tell me about pressure. Lily flinched, as if she'd been struck. Zara, please. You're right, I'm a terrible friend. But there's something else you need to know. Something about why Madison really targeted you. I don't want to hear it. She wasn't working alone. There are people, important people, who are very interested in you. In your family. They've been watching you for years. Zara went cold. What are you talking about? I don't know everything. But Madison mentioned something about your mother's death not being as simple as everyone thinks. Something about papers Elena left behind, or should have left behind. And your necklace. Zara's hand flew to the pendant at her throat. What about it? Madison asked specifically about any jewelry you inherited. She seemed to think it might be more valuable than it looks. That's insane. This cost $20 at a department store. My mom bought it for my 16th birthday. Are you sure? Lily's voice was gentle now, probing. Have you ever had it praised? Examined by a professional. Zara stared at her roommate, former roommate. She corrected herself, and felt a chill of recognition. The same look Drake had given the pendant. The same sense that everyone knew something she didn't. Get out. Zara. Get out. The words tore from her throat with surprising force. Pack your things and find somewhere else to sleep. I don't care where. Lily grabbed her handbag and headed for the door, then paused with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, I think you're in danger. Real danger. And I think Drake Hawthorne knows more about it than he's letting on. She left, closing the door with a soft click that somehow sounded like a gunshot. Zara sank onto her bed, mind reeling. In the space of one day, her carefully constructed world had imploded. Madison's attack, Drake's mysterious intervention, Lily's betrayal. It all felt connected in ways she couldn't understand. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts, stopping at a number she hadn't called in months. Dr. Patricia Winters, her mother's oncologist. The woman had been kind to them during Elena's final weeks, often staying past her shift to sit with them when the pain was too bad for talking. The phone rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Dr. Winters speaking. Dr. Winters? This is Zara Nightshade, Elena's daughter. A pause. Zara, sweetheart. How are you? I think about you often. I'm confused. Dr. Winters, when my mother died, did she leave anything with you? Any papers or personal items? Another pause, longer this time. Why would you ask that, dear? Someone told me there might have been something. Something important. Zara, where are you right now? Are you safe? The question sent ice through her veins. Why wouldn't I be safe? Listen to me very carefully. Your mother made me promise to give you something when you turned 18, or if you ever asked the right questions. I've been waiting for this call for 3 years. Zara's hand tightened on the phone. What kind of something? Not over the phone. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? Early, before my first appointment. Dr. Winters, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. And Zara? Don't tell anyone about this conversation. Anyone. Your mother died protecting secrets that powerful people have killed for. Now those secrets belong to you." The line went dead. Zara sat in the darkness of her room, staring at her phone's blank screen. Outside her window, the manicured lawns of Whitmore Academy stretched away into shadows, looking nothing like the safe haven she believed them to be for 3 years. She pulled the chain over her head and held the pendant up to the light. It looked exactly like what it was, a simple piece of costume jewelry with no remarkable features. But as she turned it in her fingers, she noticed something she'd never seen before. There, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, was a tiny engraving on the back. Not words or letters, but a symbol that looked like a crown with 3 points, surrounded by what might have been stars. Or diamonds. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "You're stronger than you know, Mija. Stronger than any of them will ever be." For the first time, Zara began to wonder if Elena Nightshade had been more than just a hotel housekeeper, and if her daughter might be more than just a scholarship student. Dr. Winter's office sat on the 3rd floor of St. Mary's Medical Center, down a hallway that smelled like hope and heartbreak in equal measure. Zara had spent too many hours in this place, watching her mother fade away one chemotherapy session at a time. Now, 3 years later, she was back for answers. "Come in quickly." Dr. Winters ushered her through the door at exactly 6 a.m., before the hallways filled with patients and staff. The doctor looked older than Zara remembered, grayer, more lined around the eyes, as if carrying heavy secrets had aged her prematurely. "Dr. Winters, what's this about? What did my mother leave?" Instead of answering, the doctor walked to a wall safe hidden behind a medical diploma. Her fingers worked the combination lock with practiced ease, and the door swung open to reveal a single manila envelope, thick with contents. "Your mother came to me 2 days before she died," Dr. Winters said, pulling out the envelope with reverent care. She was lucid, despite the morphine. Determined. She said that if anything ever happened to make you question who you were, or if dangerous people started showing interest in you, I should give you this. She handed Zara the envelope. It was heavier than expected, and Zara's name was written across the front in her mother's careful handwriting. She also said to tell you that Elena Nightshade was never her real name. The words hit like a physical blow. Zara sank into a chair, the envelope clutched against her chest. What? She was born Isabella Vasquez, heir to the Vasquez diamond fortune, one of the wealthiest families in South America before the political upheavals of the early 2000s. The room spun around Zara. "That's impossible. My mother cleaned hotel rooms. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. We shopped at thrift stores, and—" She was hiding, Dr. Winters interrupted gently, "from people who wanted her dead. People who killed the rest of her family for their fortune and their diamonds." With shaking fingers, Zara opened the envelope. Inside were documents that made no sense: birth certificates, bank account numbers, property deeds, and photographs of a woman who looked like her mother, but dressed in gowns that cost more than cars. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was a key. "What does this open?" "A safe deposit box at First National Bank downtown. Box 2847. Your mother said everything else you need to know is in there." Zara stared at the key, trying to process what she was hearing. If she was wealthy, why did we live the way we did? Why did she let herself die because we couldn't afford treatment? Dr. Winters' expression grew pained. Because accessing any of the Vasquez fortune would have been like sending up a flare to the people hunting her. She chose poverty to keep you safe. She chose death to keep you alive. And now you're 18. Now you're asking questions. Now the people who've been watching you are making their move. What people? Dr. Winters, you're not making any sense. The doctor walked to her window and peered through the blinds at the parking lot below. "Isabella, your mother, she told me about a syndicate. Powerful families who carved up the Vasquez holdings after the murders. They took the mines, the processing facilities, the distribution networks. Everything except the crown jewels. Crown jewels. The heart of Vasquez. A collection of diamonds worth more than most countries' GDP. Your mother hid them before she fled. The syndicate has spent 20 years looking for them. Zara's hand went instinctively to her throat, to the simple pendant she'd worn every day for 3 years. Dr. Winters. Yes. This necklace. It's just costume jewelry, right? Dr. Winters turned from the window, her eyes focusing on the pendant with sharp attention. May I see it? With trembling fingers, Zara lifted the chain over her head and held it out. Dr. Winters took it to her desk, pulling out a small magnifying glass from her drawer. For a long moment, she was silent. Then she looked up with eyes wide with shock. Zara, this isn't costume jewelry. This is a flawless blue diamond, approximately 3 carats, set in white gold. It's worth at least $2 million. The room went silent except for the hum of medical equipment in the next office. Zara felt like she was floating outside her body, watching someone else's life unfold. That's impossible. My mother bought this at JCPenney. Your mother was a brilliant woman who knew how to hide in plain sight. She probably had it cut and reset to look unremarkable. Dr. Winters held the pendant up to the light, and for the first time, Zara saw what Drake Hawthorne had seen, the way it caught and refracted light like no ordinary stone ever could. There's something else, the doctor continued, examining the setting with her magnifying glass. This inscription on the back, it's not decorative. It's a map. A map to what? If I had to guess? To the rest of the heart of Vasquez. The door to the office burst open without warning. 3 men in expensive suits filled the doorway, and Zara's blood turned to ice when she recognized the man in front. Drake Hawthorne's father. Vincent Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Pharmaceuticals, and one of the most powerful men in the city. Dr. Winters, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for calling us. Zara spun to stare at the doctor, who couldn't meet her eyes. You called them? I'm sorry, sweetheart. They've had people watching the hospital for 3 years, waiting for you to make contact. They knew your mother left something with me. Vincent stepped into the room, his presence somehow making it feel much smaller. Miss Vasquez, or should I say Miss Nightshade, you've grown into quite a lovely young woman. I don't know what you want, but I want what belongs to me, Vincent interrupted smoothly. What your mother stole when she fled her responsibilities 20 years ago. My mother didn't steal anything. She was running for her life. Vincent's smile widened. From us, yes. We represent certain interests that were damaged by your family's sudden disappearance. The Vasquez Diamond Empire was quite profitable until your mother decided to play hide and seek with the crown jewels. One of his companions stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. The necklace, dear. Hand it over, and we'll make this painless. And if I don't, then we'll take it anyway, Vincent said. Along with whatever's in that envelope and that key you're holding. One way or another, the heart of Vasquez is coming home. Dr. Winters stepped between them and Zara. She's just a girl. She doesn't know anything about. She knows enough. The silver-haired woman pulled out what looked like a small device, a taser, Zara realized with horror. Step aside, doctor. That's when the second door to the office, the one leading to the supply closet, burst open. Drake Hawthorne stepped through, but this wasn't the polished prep school prince Zara knew. His face was grim, his eyes hard, and he was holding a gun. Hello, father. Vincent's face went through a series of emotions, surprise, anger, and finally a cold calculation that made Zara's skin crawl. Drake, I should have known you'd be here. You should have known a lot of things. Drake kept the gun trained on his father while moving to stand beside Zara. Like the fact that I've been protecting her for 3 years. Protecting her from what, son? From you. From what you did to her family. From what you've been planning to do to her. Zara stared at Drake in shock. You knew? This whole time, you knew who I was? Drake's jaw tightened. I knew who your mother was. I figured out who you were when I saw that necklace 3 years ago. Isabella Vasquez was my mother's best friend before she died. Before my father had her killed. Vincent laughed, a sound like glass breaking. Your mother died in a car accident, Drake. My mother died because she found out about the Vasquez syndicate and was going to expose it. Just like Zara Nightshade died, because she was finally ready to reclaim what was hers. The room went deadly quiet. Zara felt the blood drain from her face. What are you saying? I'm saying your mother didn't die of cancer. Zara. She was poisoned. Slow acting, designed to mimic late-stage disease progression. Drake's voice was steady, but his hand was shaking slightly on the gun. By my father's pharmaceutical company. Dr. Winters gasped. That's impossible. I treated her myself. The scans, the blood work. We're all real, Vincent said calmly. We're very good at what we do. Elena's death was a masterpiece of modern medicine. Undetectable, untraceable, and perfectly designed to look like natural causes. Rage, unlike anything Zara had ever felt, crashed through her system. You killed my mother. I eliminated a threat to a very profitable business arrangement. Nothing personal. Drake stepped closer to his father, the gun never wavering. It's about to get very personal. You won't shoot me, son. You don't have it in you. Try me. The silver-haired woman raised her taser, pointing it at Zara. Drop the gun, boy, or the girl gets enough voltage to stop her heart. Drake's eyes flicked between his father and the woman. Cordelia Sterling. I should have known the Black Widow would be here. Hello, Drake. You've grown up nicely. Shame you chose the wrong side. There are no sides here. Just murderers and the people they've hurt. Such drama. Vincent checked his expensive watch. I'm afraid we don't have time for family bonding. Miss Vasquez, the necklace, and the key. Now, Zara looked at the pendant in her hand, then at Drake, then at the documents scattered across Dr. Winters' desk. Her mother's secrets. Her mother's legacy. Her mother's death. No. I beg your pardon? I said no. Zara stood straighter, feeling something her mother had once called Vasquez steel flowing through her veins. You want the heart of Vasquez? Come and take it. She grabbed Dr. Winters' hand and dove toward the supply closet, pulling the doctor with her. Drake followed, slamming the door behind them just as the taser discharged, filling the air with crackling electricity. There's an exit through the pharmacy, Dr. Winters whispered, leading them through the narrow space filled with medical supplies. But they'll have people watching all the exits. Not all of them, Drake said grimly. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick text. Help is coming. What kind of help? Zara asked as they reached a service door at the back of a supply area. The kind that's been waiting 20 years for this moment. He opened the door to reveal a loading dock where 3 black SUVs were waiting. Engines running. The lead vehicle's window rolled down, revealing a face that made Zara's breath catch. It was a man in his 50s with her mother's eyes and her own stubborn chin. Hello, Sabrina, he said in accented English. I'm your Uncle Carlos, and it's time to go home. As Vincent Hawthorne's shouts echoed from the office behind them, Zara clutched the pendant and the key, realizing that everything she'd thought she knew about her life had been a lie. But the truth was about to be so much more dangerous than fiction. The SUV tore through the city streets like a bullet, weaving between traffic with a driver who clearly knew how to lose a tail. Zara sat in the back seat between Drake and a man who claimed to be her uncle, a man she'd never heard her mother mention even once. Start talking, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. If you're really my uncle, where have you been for the past 18 years? Why didn't you help when Mom was dying? Why? Because I thought you were both dead. Carlos Vasquez had his sister's eyes, but where Elena's had been soft with love and worry, his burned with barely controlled fury. Isabella and I were separated during the attack on the family compound. I spent 3 years looking for survivors. When I finally tracked down what happened, I found death certificates for both of you, filed with the Colombian government 2 days after the massacre. Death certificates? Drake leaned forward. Your father's work? Carlos nodded grimly. Vincent Hawthorne is thorough, I'll give him that. He and his syndicate didn't just steal our diamond empire. They erased every trace that we'd ever existed. New identities, false documents, manufactured evidence. As far as the world knew, the Vasquez family died in a terrorist attack in 2004. Zara studied his face, looking for traces of her mother in his features. They were there, the shape of his nose, the way his mouth curved when he was thinking. But there was a hardness in him that Elena had never possessed, a coldness that made her wonder what 20 years of hunting killers had done to his soul. "How did you find me?" "I never stopped looking. Every few years, I'd pick up a trace, a transaction here, a medical record there." Elena was careful, but not perfect. 3 months ago, one of my contacts flagged unusual activity around your name. People asking questions, resources being mobilized. I realized the syndicate had found you. The SUV took a hard right, tires squealing against asphalt. Through the rear window, Zara could see 2 black sedans following them, maintaining distance, but clearly in pursuit. "They're gaining," the driver called back. His accent was different from Carlos's, Middle Eastern, maybe. "We need to lose them before we reach the safe house." "Take the industrial route," Carlos instructed. "Through the warehouse district." Drake's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went pale. "They have Dr. Winters." "What?" Zara grabbed his arm. "What do you mean they have her?" "My father just sent me a video." Drake's jaw clenched. "She's tied up in some kind of warehouse. He wants to make a trade, the doctor for you and the necklace." "We're not making any trades," Carlos said flatly. "She helped us. She's innocent in all this." "No one is innocent in this war, Sabrina. The sooner you learn that, the longer you'll survive." Zara stared at her uncle in horror. "We can't just let them kill her. We can't save everyone. Isabella learned that lesson too late." "Don't you dare." The words came out harder than she'd intended. "Don't you dare use my mother's name to justify abandoning someone who needs help." Carlos's eyes flashed with something that might have been approval. "You have your mother's fire. Good. You'll need it." The SUV plunged into the warehouse district, weaving between industrial buildings that looked like concrete monuments to urban decay. Their pursuers fell back slightly, probably calling for reinforcements to cut off their escape routes. "There," Drake pointed to a building ahead. "The Meridian Processing Plant. It's been abandoned for 5 years. If we can get inside, we might be able to lose them in the maze of corridors." "Too dangerous," Carlos objected. "Too many ways to get trapped." "Better than leading them to whatever safe house you have planned," Drake shot back. "If they capture Zara, this all ends badly." Carlos studied Drake with calculating eyes. "Why should I trust you?" "Your father is the enemy." "Because I've spent 3 years protecting her from him." "Because I loved your sister like a mother." "And because if Zara dies, I die with her." The simple declaration hit Zara like a physical blow. She turned to stare at Drake, seeing something in his eyes she'd never noticed before. Not just attraction or teenage infatuation, but something deeper. Something that looked like the kind of love that would burn the world down to keep her safe. "You've been watching me for 3 years?" "Protecting you," he corrected. "Making sure Madison and her crew never pushed too far. Making sure you got into classes that kept you away from certain people. Making sure no one dug too deep into your background." "The scholarship committee," she realized. "You influenced my scholarship. My trust fund influenced your scholarship. But you earned every grade, every achievement, every success. I just made sure you had the opportunity." Carlos made a disgusted sound. "Touching. Can we focus on staying alive?" The driver yanked the wheel hard left, tires screaming as they took the turn into the processing plant's parking lot. The building loomed ahead, 6 stories of broken windows and graffiti-covered concrete, surrounded by rusted machinery and abandoned loading docks. "Everyone out," Carlos ordered as the SUV skidded to a stop. "Move fast, stay low, follow me." They ran across the open ground toward the building's main entrance, Zara clutching the envelope of documents against her chest while the pendant bounced against her collarbone. Behind them, she could hear the sound of car doors slamming and feet pounding against concrete. The entrance doors had been chained shut years ago, but Carlos produced a set of bolt cutters from seemingly nowhere and made quick work of the locks. They slipped inside just as the first of their pursuers rounded the corner of the building. The interior of the processing plant was a maze of conveyor belts, industrial machinery, and shadows that seemed to move independently of their flashlight beams. Dust motes danced in the pale light filtering through broken windows, and every step echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. "This way," Carlos whispered, leading them toward a set of metal stairs that climbed to the upper levels. "We need to get to the roof. I have an extraction team waiting." They climbed in silence, their footsteps masked by the sound of their pursuers breaking through the main entrance below. Zara's legs burned from the exertion, but adrenaline kept her moving. At the third-floor landing, Drake grabbed her arm. "Wait." He pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. "Another message from my father." The video was grainy, shot in what looked like a warehouse, but Dr. Winters was clearly visible tied to a chair. She looked terrified, but unharmed. Vincent Hawthorne's voice came through the phone speaker. "You have 30 minutes to bring the girl and the necklace to Pier 47. Come alone, or the good doctor dies very slowly." "It's a trap," Carlos said immediately. "Of course it's a trap," Drake replied. "But he'll kill her if we don't show." Zara stared at the video, seeing the woman who had cared for her mother in those final weeks, who had risked everything to give her the truth about her heritage. Dr. Winters had betrayed her location, yes, but only under duress. She didn't deserve to die for Zara's family sins. "We're going," she said quietly. "Absolutely not." Carlos moved to block her path up the stairs. "I've spent 20 years tracking down the people who killed my family. I won't lose the last surviving heir to a rescue mission." "Then you'll lose her to a guilty conscience," Drake said. "I know Zara. She'll never forgive herself if Dr. Winters dies because of her. I can live with guilt. I can't live with being dead." Zara looked between the two men, one driven by love, one driven by vengeance, and realized they were both right and both wrong. The sound of footsteps echoed from below as their pursuers spread out through the building, systematically searching each floor. "There's a third option," she said, pulling the pendant from around her neck. "We give them what they want." "Zara, no. Not the real thing." She held up the necklace, examining it in the dim light. "Drake, you said this was worth $2 million. At least. And it's a map to the rest of the heart of Esquez." Carlos nodded reluctantly. "The inscription contains coordinates and depth measurements. Without it, the remaining diamonds might as well be on the moon." "Then we make a copy. Give them something that looks real, but leads them somewhere else." "How exactly do you propose we make a perfect replica of a priceless diamond in the next 25 minutes? Carlos asked sarcastically. Zara smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt since this nightmare began. "Because I spent 3 years learning jewelry design in Whitmore's art program. And because this building used to be a precious metals processing plant. If the equipment is still here." She led them to a door marked Quality Control and pushed it open. Inside was a small laboratory space, abandoned but still containing microscopes, measuring tools, and most importantly, a precision engraving machine. "I can't replicate the diamond," she said, examining the equipment. "But I can copy the engraving onto something else. Something that will fool them long enough to get Dr. Winters to safety." Drake was already searching through drawers and cabinets. "Here," he said, holding up a small piece of blue glass. "Industrial sapphire. It's the right color and size." Carlos watched them work with grudging admiration. "You realize this will only buy us time. Once they discover the deception. Then we'd better make sure we're far away when they do." Zara positioned the glass under the engraving machine, using the microscope to carefully copy the intricate symbol from her mother's pendant. Her hands were steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. 3 years of detailed artwork had given her precision even under pressure. The sound of footsteps grew closer. Their pursuers had reached the second floor and were working their way up systematically. 15 minutes, Drake warned, keeping watch at the door. Zara worked faster, the tiny engraving tool carving microscopic lines into the glass surface. The symbol was more complex than it had appeared, not just a crown and stars, but a precise mathematical sequence that probably corresponded to geographic coordinates. "Done," she breathed, holding up the finished replica. In the dim light, it was nearly indistinguishable from the original. "Now we need a setting," Carlos said, producing a small toolkit from his jacket. "Something that will hold it long enough to pass inspection." While he worked to mount the glass in a simple silver chain, Zara studied the real pendant under the microscope. Now that she knew what to look for, she could see the true artistry in the engraving. This wasn't just a map, it was a work of art, created by someone who understood that beauty and function could coexist even in the most dangerous circumstances. "Your mother was remarkable," Carlos said softly, noticing her expression. She could have lived comfortably off the family fortune her entire life. Instead, she chose to work with her hands, to create beauty for people who couldn't afford luxury. Even in hiding, she couldn't stop being who she was. "She never told me any of this." She was protecting you. From the weight of expectation, from the burden of revenge, from the knowledge that you were born into a war you didn't choose. Carlos finished setting the fake stone and held it up for inspection. She wanted you to have a choice about who you became. The sound of voices echoed from the stairwell, close now maybe one floor below. "Time to go," Drake said urgently. They slipped out of the laboratory and climbed to the 4th floor, then the 5th. At the 6th floor, Carlos led them to a maintenance ladder that climbed to the roof. As they emerged into the late morning sunlight, Zara could see the harbor in the distance, and Pier 47, where Dr. Winters was waiting. "The extraction team is 3 minutes out," Carlos said, speaking into a small radio. "But we need to move fast." A helicopter appeared on the horizon, flying low and fast toward their position. But from below came the sound of the roof access door slamming open, and Vincent Hawthorne's voice calling out, "Nowhere left to run, Miss Vasquez." He emerged onto the rooftop flanked by 6 armed men, his expensive suit somehow still immaculate despite the chase through the abandoned building. Behind him came the silver-haired woman, Cordelia Sterling, and a third person who made Zara's blood run cold. Madison Ashworth, but not the spoiled prep school princess Zara remembered. This Madison moved with predatory grace, and her eyes held a coldness that belonged on someone much older and infinitely more dangerous. "Hello, scholarship girl," Madison purred. "Surprise. You're part of this." Zara couldn't hide the shock in her voice. "Part of it? Sweetie, my family founded it. The Ashworth Syndicate has been acquiring valuable assets for 3 generations. Your family's diamond empire was just our biggest score." Madison's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Did you really think it was coincidence that I targeted you? You've been under surveillance since the day you set foot on Whitmore campus." The helicopter was closer now, but Vincent's men had already raised their weapons. Carlos reached for his own gun, but stopped when Cordelia Sterling pressed the barrel of hers against Drake's temple. "The necklace," Vincent said calmly. "Real or fake, original or copy, I want it now. Along with that envelope and the key." Zara looked at Drake, seeing the resignation in his eyes. At Carlos, seeing the fury he was barely containing. At Madison, seeing the triumph of someone who had spent years planning this moment. Then she looked at the pendant in her hand, the real one, not the copy, and made a decision that would change everything. "You want the heart of Vasquez?" she called out, her voice carrying clearly across the rooftop. "Here it is." She held up the necklace, letting it catch the sunlight so that the blue diamond blazed like a captured star. "But you're never going to have it." And with that, she threw it as hard as she could toward the edge of the roof. The pendant arced through the air, spinning end over end, the chain trailing behind it like a comet's tail. Everyone on the rooftop watched it fly, Vincent lunging forward with a cry of rage, Madison screaming in fury, Carlos shouting her name. The necklace disappeared over the edge of the building, falling 6 stories toward the concrete parking lot below. For a moment, everything was silent except for the approaching helicopter. Then Vincent Hawthorne began to laugh. "Brilliant," he said, clapping slowly. "Absolutely brilliant. Destroy the map so no one can find the treasure. Very noble, Miss Vasquez." He pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. Another video of Dr. Winters, but this time the timestamp showed it was live. "Unfortunately," Vincent continued, The good doctor still dies unless you give me what I want. And now that you've destroyed the only key to finding the rest of the diamonds, I'm afraid she's become quite expendable." Zara felt the world tilt around her. She'd made a desperate gamble and failed. Dr. Winters was going to die because of her choice. That's when Drake stepped forward, pulling something from his pocket. "Actually," he said with a smile that was pure predator, "she didn't destroy the only key." In his hand was the original pendant, the real heart of Vasquez, exactly as Zara had worn it for 3 years. "What Zara threw off the roof," he continued, "was our fake. I switched them while she was engraving the copy. She's been wearing a piece of industrial glass for the past hour." Vincent's face went through several expressions before settling on grudging respect. "My son, the double agent. I'm almost proud." "Don't be," Drake replied. "I learned from the best, after all." The helicopter was directly overhead now, beginning to descend toward the rooftop. Carlos was speaking rapidly into his radio, coordinating with the extraction team. But Vincent wasn't finished. "Take him down," he ordered his men. The rooftop erupted in gunfire. The world exploded into chaos. Gunshots cracked through the air as Carlos's extraction team fast-roped down from the helicopter, return fire spraying from their weapons as they landed on the rooftop. Zara dove behind an industrial ventilation unit, Drake rolling in the opposite direction as Cordelia Sterling's shot missed his head by inches. "Zara!" Carlos shouted over the gunfire. "Stay down." But staying down was an option. Through the maze of bullets and screaming, she could see Madison Ashworth moving with deadly purpose toward Drake's position, a small pistol in her perfectly manicured hands. Years of preparation had led Madison to this moment, not the petty cruelties of a spoiled rich girl, but the calculated moves of a trained killer. She raised the weapon with professional ease, finger tightening on the trigger. Zara didn't think. She launched herself from behind cover, tackling Madison around the waist just as the gun discharged. They went down hard against the concrete, the weapon skittering away across the roof. "You stupid little scholarship rat," Madison snarled, clawing at Zara's face with nails sharp enough to draw blood. "Do you have any idea how long I've been planning this? How much work went into getting close to you?" They rolled across the rough rooftop surface, fighting with desperation rather than skill. Madison was stronger, trained in combat, but Zara had the fury of someone who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose. 3 years. Madison continued, landing a brutal punch to Zara's ribs. 3 years of pretending to be a vapid teenager, suffering through high school social hierarchies, all to get close enough to earn your trust and destroy you at the perfect moment. Zara managed to get her hands around Madison's throat. "You killed my mother. My family killed your family. I just finished the job." Madison's eyes glittered with malicious triumph. Though I have to admit, the slow poisoning was Vincent's touch of genius. Watching Elena Nightshade waste away, knowing she could have saved herself by revealing the location of the diamonds, it was poetry. Rage gave Zara strength she didn't know she possessed. She drove her knee into Madison's stomach and rolled away, scrambling toward the dropped pistol. Behind her, Madison laughed breathlessly. "You think killing me will change anything? We have teams stationed around the world, Zara. Assets in every major city, connections in every government. Even if you escape today, we'll find you tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that." Zara's fingers closed around the gun's grip. She'd never held a weapon before, but the weight of it felt strangely natural in her hand, like something she'd inherited along with her mother's eyes and her grandmother's stubbornness. "Maybe," she said, turning to face Madison with the pistol steady in her grip. "But you won't be there to see it." Madison's expression shifted from triumph to confusion to dawning horror as she realized Zara wasn't bluffing. "You don't have it in you," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're not a killer." "You're right," Zara agreed. "I'm not. But I'm a Vasquez. And Vasquez women protect what's theirs." The gunshot was lost in the cacophony of battle raging around them. Madison Ashworth, heir to a criminal dynasty and architect of Zara's torment, dropped to the concrete with her perfectly glossed lips forming a perfect O of surprise. She'd been wrong about many things in her 18 years, but never more wrong than in her final assessment of Zara Nightshade's capacity for violence. Zara stared at the body for a moment, waiting to feel something: guilt, horror, satisfaction. Instead, she felt nothing at all. Just a cold emptiness where her emotions used to be. Zara. Drake's voice cut through her shock. We have to go. She turned to see him limping toward her, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Behind him, Carlos was directing the last of the extraction team toward the helicopter. But Vincent Hawthorne and Cordelia Sterling were nowhere to be seen. Where are they? She shouted over the noise of the rotors. Gone, Carlos replied grimly. Slipped away during the firefight. But they'll be back. Not if we get to the diamonds first, Drake said, holding up the pendant. This is our only advantage. As they climbed into the helicopter, Zara took one last look at the rooftop, where Madison's body lay still and broken. 3 years of psychological warfare ended in 30 seconds of brutal honesty. The aircraft lifted off just as police sirens began wailing in the distance. Through the window, Zara watched the city shrink below them, carrying away everything she thought she knew about her life. Where are we going? She asked Carlos. Colombia, he replied. To the place where our family's story began, and where it's going to end. The diamonds are in Colombia. The diamonds are everywhere, Drake said, studying the pendant under a magnifying glass he'd produced from somewhere. But the key to finding them starts there. He showed her the inscription she'd memorized while making the fake. Under magnification, it was even more complex than she'd realized, not just coordinates and depth measurements, but what looked like astronomical calculations. Your mother wasn't just hiding treasure, Carlos explained. She was hiding an empire. The Vasquez diamond operation spanned 6 countries and employed thousands of people. When the syndicate took over, they got the infrastructure and the processing facilities, but not the source. The mines, the mine, singular, the heart of Colombia, a diamond deposit so rich it could fund small wars. Isabella sealed it before she fled, using explosives to collapse the main shafts. The only way to reopen it is with the precise coordinates of the secondary access tunnels. Zara studied her uncle's face, seeing truth and something else. Hope, maybe, or vindication. And those coordinates are on my mother's necklace, along with the astronomical data needed to navigate the cave system. Your mother was many things, Sabrina, but she was also a mining engineer with a degree from the Colorado School of Mines. She knew exactly how to hide a treasure that would stay hidden until she was ready to reclaim it. The helicopter banked sharply, heading south toward international airspace. Through the window, Zara could see cars converging on the processing plant. Vincent Hawthorne's reinforcements, arriving too late to stop their escape. There's something else you need to know, Carlos continued, his expression growing grave. About Dr. Winters. Zara's stomach dropped. What about her? The warehouse where she's being held. I know the location. Then why aren't we going there? Carlos and Drake exchanged a look that spoke of shared knowledge and difficult decisions. Because it's not a warehouse, Drake said quietly. It's a ship. My father's private yacht, currently anchored 12 miles offshore in international waters. So it's also a trap, Carlos finished. Vincent knew we'd try to rescue her. The entire setup, the video, the time limit, the location. It's all designed to draw us into a kill zone where he has every advantage. Zara felt the cold emptiness in her chest expand. She's going to die because of me. She's going to die because she got caught in a war she didn't start, Carlos corrected. The same war that killed your mother, my parents, my brothers and sisters. The same war that will kill all of us if we don't end it. How do we end it? By giving Vincent Hawthorne exactly what he wants, Drake said with a smile that held no warmth at all, and making sure it destroys him. He pulled out his phone and began typing a message. I'm telling my father that we'll trade. The real pendant for Dr. Winters, no tricks, no backup, just a simple exchange. That's suicide. No, Drake replied, hitting send on the message. That's the beginning of the end. The phone buzzed immediately with a response. Drake read it and nodded grimly. He agrees. Sunset at the marina. He brings the doctor, we bring the necklace. And then what? Zara asked. Carlos's smile was sharp as a blade. Then we show the syndicate what happens when they underestimate a Vasquez. As the helicopter carried them toward an uncertain future, Zara clutched her mother's pendant and tried to imagine what Elena would think of the woman her daughter was becoming. The girl who'd attended Whitmore Academy on scholarship was gone, replaced by someone who could kill without hesitation and plan revenge without remorse. She wondered if her mother would be proud or horrified. Then she decided it didn't matter. Elena Nightshade had died protecting her daughter's innocence, but Zara Vasquez was going to live by embracing her birthright as an heiress to violence and vindication. The war for her family's legacy was just beginning. The marina at sunset looked like a painting, gold light shimmering on dark water, expensive yachts bobbing gently at their moorings, the kind of serene wealth that made violence seem impossible. Zara stood on the pier beside Drake, the real pendant heavy in her palm, and tried to ignore the snipers she knew were positioned on the surrounding buildings. Carlos had argued against the direct approach, but Drake had been adamant. Vincent Hawthorne expected deception, so they'd give him honesty. They'd make the trade, rescue Dr. Winters, and then disappear into the night while Carlos's people moved the real treasure to safety. It was a simple plan, which meant it was almost certainly going to go wrong. There, Drake pointed toward the harbor entrance, where a massive yacht was gliding into view. The Meridian's crown flew flags of convenience that meant nothing and displayed a level of luxury that meant everything. On the upper deck, tiny figures moved with military precision. 50-foot sport fisher, Zara observed, noting the vessel's sleek lines. Fast enough to outrun the Coast Guard, big enough to carry serious firepower. You know boats. My mother worked at the marina during summers when I was little. I spent a lot of time around rich people's toys. The memory was bittersweet, Elena in her housekeeping uniform, picking up after people who never learned her name. I always wondered what it would be like to own something that beautiful. After tonight, you might find out. The yacht docked with professional efficiency, crew members securing lines while others maintained overwatch positions. When the gangway extended, Vincent Hawthorne emerged first, looking like he was attending a business dinner rather than a hostage exchange. Behind him came Cordelia Sterling, her silver hair gleaming in the dying light. And between them, supported by two men in tactical gear, was Dr. Winters. The doctor looked terrible, pale, shaking, obviously drugged or injured. But she was alive, which was more than Zara had dared hope. Miss Vasquez, Vincent called across the water between the pier and the yacht. Punctual as always. I appreciate that in an adversary. Where's the doctor? Zara called back. Safe aboard my ship, as promised. Where's my necklace? Zara held up the pendant, letting it catch the light. Even from 50 yards away, the blue diamond's fire was unmistakable. Closer, Vincent said. I need to verify authenticity. Drake stepped forward. Same time. You bring Dr. Winters to the gangway. We'll meet you there. I don't think so, son. You've proven quite resourceful at deception. I'll need the necklace in hand before the doctor leaves the yacht. Then we have a problem, Zara said, because I'm not stepping foot on that boat without proof she's unharmed. They stood in silence for a moment, each side calculating advantages and risks. The marina had emptied of casual visitors as word spread of the unusual activity, leaving only the principal players and their hidden assets. Compromise, Vincent finally called. Dr. Winters walks to the end of the gangway. You walk to the beginning. Simultaneous exchange. Zara looked at Drake, who nodded slightly. The plan was still salvageable, barely. Agreed. They began walking toward the yacht, feet echoing on the wooden pier. Dr. Winters appeared at the top of the gangway, supported by Sterling but moving under her own power. Her eyes met Zara's across the distance, and despite her obvious fear, she managed a small smile. Halfway to the boat, Drake's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and went rigid. What? Zara whispered. Carlos. The safe house is compromised. They found our extraction point. Zara's blood turned to ice. Without backup, without an escape route, they were walking into a trap with no way out. Keep walking, she murmured. We save the doctor first, worry about ourselves after. They reached the beginning of the gangway as Dr. Winters arrived at the other end. 30 feet of aluminum decking stretched between them, with Vincent Hawthorne waiting at the midpoint. The necklace, he said, extending his hand. Zara held up the pendant one more time, memorizing the way it caught the light. Her mother's legacy, her family's birthright, the key to a fortune that could reshape nations. She was about to hand it to the man who'd murdered her mother. I want to see the inscription, she said suddenly. Vincent's eyes narrowed. What? Before I give it to you, I want to see the inscription on the back. One last look at my mother's handwriting. It was a reasonable request, the kind of sentimental gesture that wouldn't arouse suspicion. Vincent stepped closer, allowing Zara to hold the pendant where they both could see it. What he couldn't see was her thumb covering a specific section of the engraving. Beautiful work, Vincent said appreciatively, studying the intricate symbols. Isabella always was artistic. It's almost a shame to destroy such a lovely piece. Destroy it. Oh yes. Once we have the coordinates memorized, the physical evidence becomes a liability. Can't have other treasure hunters following our trail. Zara felt Drake tense beside her. And Dr. Winters? Vincent's smile was predatory. A liability as well, I'm afraid. Too much knowledge for civilian comfort. We had a deal. We had a negotiation. Deals are for equals, Miss Vasquez. You're a child playing at empire building while adults conduct business. Sterling's grip on Dr. Winters tightened, and Zara saw the glint of a blade pressed against the doctor's ribs. The necklace, Vincent repeated. Now. Zara looked at the pendant in her hand, then at Dr. Winters, then at Drake. The plan was falling apart, just as she'd known it would. But there was still one card left to play. You know what the funny thing is, she said conversationally. My mother told me something before she died. Something about men who mistake cruelty for strength. How touching. The necklace. She said they always make the same mistake. They assume everyone else is as weak as they are afraid of being. Vincent's patience was clearly wearing thin. Miss Vasquez. For instance, Zara continued, you assumed I'd never figure out that Dr. Winters isn't just a witness. She's your partner. The words hit like a bomb blast. Vincent went still. Sterling's eyes flicked to the doctor, and Dr. Winters herself looked stricken. That's ridiculous, Vincent said, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? 20 years of hunting my family, and you just happen to place your inside agent as my mother's oncologist? The one person Elena would trust with her deepest secrets. Zara's voice was growing stronger, more confident. The woman who convinced my mother to hide her assets rather than spend them on experimental treatments that might have saved her life. Dr. Winters was shaking her head frantically, but tears were streaming down her face. Patricia, Vincent said quietly. Tell her she's wrong. I can't, Dr. Winters whispered. God help me, I can't. The admission shattered something in Zara's chest. Dr. Winters, kind, caring Dr. Winters, who had held her hand during Elena's final days, had been working for her mother's killers all along. Why? The word came out broken, barely audible. My daughter, Dr. Winters sobbed. They have my daughter. They've had her for 3 years, ever since Elena started asking questions about experimental treatments. They said if I helped them, Sarah would be safe. If I didn't, Sterling's blade pressed deeper, drawing a thin line of blood. Enough confessions. The necklace girl. Last warning. Zara stared at Dr. Winters, seeing not a villain, but another victim caught in Vincent's web of manipulation and violence. How many people had he destroyed to get to this moment? How many lives had he twisted to serve his greed? You want the necklace? Zara said, her voice deadly calm. Yes. Take it. She threw the pendant high into the air, where it spun end over end against the darkening sky. Vincent lunged for it instinctively, Sterling's attention following the glittering arc. Dr. Winters momentarily forgotten. That's when Drake moved. 3 years of lacrosse had given him speed and precision. He hit Sterling low and hard, sending her tumbling across the gangway while Dr. Winters stumbled free. The knife went spinning into the water with a splash. But Vincent Hawthorne was faster than his age suggested. His hand closed around the pendant as it fell, and his other hand produced a pistol that seemed to appear from nowhere. "Clever," he said, breathing hard but still in control, but ultimately pointless. The gun was pointed at Dr. Winters. 3 seconds to get back on my yacht, or she dies. And this time I mean it. Drake helped the doctor to her feet, but kept himself between her and Vincent's weapon. "Zara, run. I'm not leaving you. You have to. The mission is bigger than any of us." Vincent's phone rang. He answered it without taking his eyes, or his gun, off them. "What? Are you certain?" His expression grew confused, then alarmed. "How is that possible?" He ended the call and stared at the pendant in his hand with dawning realization. "This isn't the real one either." Zara smiled for the first time since the marina. "No, it isn't." "Where is it?" "Safe. Along with copies of every document you've spent 20 years trying to bury. Financial records, murder contracts, blackmail materials, everything my mother collected before she went into hiding." Vincent's face went white. "Impossible. We monitored every bank account, every safe deposit box." "Every legal one," Zara agreed. "But my mother was smarter than that. She knew you'd be watching traditional hiding places." She pulled out her phone and showed him a photograph. The interior of a storage unit filled with boxes of documents, computer drives, and financial records. "Swiss banking isn't the only way to keep secrets, Mr. Hawthorne. Sometimes the best place to hide a fortune is in plain sight." Vincent's gun hand was shaking now. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Because in about 30 minutes, copies of everything in that storage unit are going to be delivered to the FBI, the IRS, Interpol, and every major news organization in North America. Your syndicate, your business empire, your political connections, it's all going to come crashing down. Unless you let us go. All of us, including Dr. Winters. And unless you release her daughter from whatever hole you've been keeping her in." Vincent looked from Zara to Drake to Dr. Winters, calculating odds and options. Around the marina, shadows moved as his security team repositioned for different contingencies. "And in exchange? In exchange, I'll tell you where the real heart of Vasquez is hidden." The lie came easily, smoothly, with the kind of conviction that would have made her mother proud. Because the truth was, Zara had no idea where the pendant was. She'd given it to Carlos before they'd left for the marina, trusting him to keep it safe while she played her part in the deception. But Vincent didn't need to know that. "You have 5 minutes to decide," she continued. "After that, the whole world knows what you've been doing for the past 20 years." Vincent's finger tightened on the trigger, and for a moment, Zara thought he was going to call her bluff. End everything here on the pier in a hail of gunfire and blood. Instead, he began to laugh. "Outstanding," he said, lowering the weapon. "Absolutely outstanding. Isabella would be proud." He gestured to Sterling, who helped Dr. Winters back onto the yacht. "I agree to your terms, Miss Vasquez. But understand, this isn't over. It will never be over. Your mother spent 18 years running for me, and in the end, I still won. You can postpone the inevitable, but you cannot escape it." "Maybe not," Zara replied. "But I can sure as hell make you work for it." As the yacht pulled away from the pier, carrying Dr. Winters back into captivity, Zara felt the last of her innocence die. She'd played the game by Vincent's rules and saved one life, but at the cost of revealing just how far she was willing to go for revenge. The war for her family's legacy had become personal, and Zara Vasquez was discovering she had a talent for warfare. The safe house was a converted warehouse in an industrial district where nobody asked questions about unusual activity. Carlos had chosen it for its multiple exit routes and clear sight lines. But as Zara climbed the stairs to the second floor, she realized those advantages wouldn't matter if Vincent Hawthorne decided to bring an army. "The documents are secure," Carlos reported as they gathered around a table covered with laptops, maps, and surveillance photos. "Copies are already in the hands of 3 different law enforcement agencies. Hawthorne's empire is going to start crumbling within hours." "What about Dr. Winters?" Zara asked. "My contacts in the Harbor Authority are tracking the Meridian's crown," Drake said, studying a computer screen. She's anchored in international waters, but she's not moving. Vincent is waiting for something. He's waiting for me to make good on my promise, Zara said quietly. I told him I'd given the real pendant's location in exchange for letting us go. Carlos and Drake exchanged a look. About that, Carlos said carefully. We need to talk. He pulled a small velvet bag from his pocket and emptied it onto the table. The blue diamond caught the overhead light and threw it back in crystalline fragments, as beautiful and deadly as the woman who'd worn it for 3 years. The real heart of Vasquez, he said. The key to a fortune worth more than most nations' GDP. Zara picked up the pendant, feeling its familiar weight. I thought you were keeping it safe. I was. But safe isn't the same as hidden. Vincent's people found our secondary location 2 hours ago. They killed 3 of my best operatives trying to get to this. The words hit like physical blows. 3 people dead. For a piece of jewelry. For a legacy drenched in blood. Zara's fingers tightened around the pendant, the cold metal biting into her palm. It was no longer a memento. It was a weapon, a curse, a beacon that drew death. We have a choice, Carlos said, his voice gravelly with grief and rage. We can continue to run. We can try to hide it again, better this time. Or, he let the word hang in the dusty air of the warehouse, heavy with implication. Or we use it, Drake finished, his eyes locked on Zara. We turn his greed against him. We set the trap he'll be too arrogant to see coming. Use it how? Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. She felt the weight of every life lost. Her mother's, the operatives, the innocence of her own past. The cold emptiness that had filled her after killing Madison began to solidify into something else. A core of hardened resolve. We give him exactly what he wants, Carlos said, a plan forming in his eyes as he looked to the diamond. A chance to claim the heart of Vasquez. But on our terms, in a place of our choosing. He'll never fall for it, Zara countered. He knows we'd never just hand it over. We won't be handing it over, Drake said, a dangerous smile touching his lips. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the piece of industrial sapphire from the processing plant, the one Zara had engraved. He'll be taking it. He'll think he's outsmarted us. He'll believe he has the real key. And while he's focused on that, we go for the real prize, Zara finished, understanding dawning. Dr. Winters. And her daughter. Carlos nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. The exchange on the yacht was a test. You played your part perfectly. You showed him you're capable of deception, that you're your mother's daughter. Now we show him you're capable of strategic sacrifice. We let him win the battle, so we can win the war. The plan was audacious, insane, and terrifying. It meant willingly putting the one thing Vincent wanted most into his hands, even temporarily. It meant betting everything on their ability to outmaneuver him in the moments, after his perceived victory. Where? Zara asked, the single word committing her to the path. The mine, Carlos said, unrolling a worn topographic map of the Colombian jungle. The heart of Colombia. It's the one place on earth Vincent Hawthorne wants to stand more than any other. The source of everything. He'll come. His ego won't let him refuse. The Colombian jungle was a living, breathing entity of steam and sound. Mosquitoes whined in the thick, humid air, and the cries of howler monkeys echoed through the canopy like ancient alarms. Zara stood at the edge of a massive sinkhole, the overgrown entrance to the Vasquez diamond mine. It didn't look like the source of an empire. It looked like a grave. She held the fake pendant, the industrial sapphire in its simple setting. The real one was secure in a hidden pocket sewn into her tactical gear. Drake was positioned 50 yards away, high in a kapok tree, a sniper rifle providing overwatch. Carlos and his remaining team were hidden around the clearing, their faces painted in jungle camouflage, their weapons ready. They were the bait and the hook. Right on time, the jungle fell silent. The natural sounds were replaced by the mechanical whir of a helicopter approaching. It circled once, a black insect against the brilliant blue sky, then descended into the clearing, its rotors whipping the dense foliage into a frenzy. Vincent Hawthorne stepped out, impeccably dressed in a safari jacket that cost more than a car. Cordelia Sterling was at his side, along with 6 mercenaries whose cold eyes scanned the tree line. And between them, held roughly by 2 men, was Dr. Winters. She looked frail, broken, but her eyes met Zara's with a desperate, pleading hope. "Miss Vasquez," Vincent called out, his voice cutting through the rotor wash. "You chose a dramatic setting for our final meeting." "I thought you'd appreciate the symbolism," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "This is where it began. This is where it ends." "Where what ends?" Vincent asked, smiling indulgently. "Your rebellion? Hand over the pendant, and the doctor goes free. You have my word." Zara laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Your word is worthless. We do this my way. You send the doctor across the clearing. When she reaches me, I throw you the necklace." Vincent's smile didn't falter. A test of trust. How quaint. He nodded to his men. They released Dr. Winters, giving her a small shove. The doctor stumbled forward, her steps unsteady on the uneven ground. Every yard she crossed felt like an eternity. Zara's eyes were glued to her, but her peripheral vision tracked Vincent's men, the sniper in the helicopter, Sterling's hand resting on her weapon. Dr. Winters was 10 feet away. 5. Their hands touched, and Zara pulled the woman behind her into the relative safety of the jungle's edge. "The necklace," Vincent demanded, his patience thinning. Zara held up the fake pendant. "The heart of Vasquez. The key to your empire." She threw it in a high, glittering arc. It was a perfect throw. The necklace landed at Vincent's feet. He stared at it for a fraction of a second, a flicker of triumph in his eyes, before bending to pick it up. It was all the distraction they needed. A single shot cracked through the air, not from Drake's position, but from the jungle behind Vincent. One of his mercenaries dropped, a bullet through his helmet. The clearing erupted into chaos. While Vincent's forces scrambled, distracted by the unseen shooter, Carlos's team emerged from hiding, laying down suppressing fire. Drake's rifle spoke from above, taking out the helicopter's sniper with chilling precision. Zara didn't watch the firefight. Her eyes were on Vincent. He had scooped up the pendant, a look of ecstatic triumph on his face as he held it to the light. He believed he had won. Then his expression changed. His eyes narrowed. He pulled out a jeweler's loupe and examined the stone closely. His face, once triumphant, contorted into a mask of pure, undiluted rage. "It's a fake," he roared, his voice cutting through the gunfire. He spun, his eyes locking on Zara. "You bitch." He raised his pistol, aiming directly at her heart. But he never got to pull the trigger. From the tree line, a figure stepped forward. A woman, her face streaked with mud and tears, but her posture ramrod straight. In her hands, she held a hunting rifle, its barrel pointed steadily at Vincent Hawthorne. It was Dr. Winters. "You took my daughter, Vincent," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "You made me betray a woman I called a friend. You poisoned her and called it business." Vincent stared, utterly stunned. "Patricia, what are you doing?" "What I should have done 3 years ago." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "Sarah is safe. Carlos's people extracted her from your compound an hour ago. I have nothing left for you to threaten." The world seemed to hold its breath. The gunfire had stopped. Vincent's remaining men were disarmed, held at gunpoint by Carlos's team. Vincent Hawthorne, the king of his syndicate, stood utterly alone. "You won't shoot me," he whispered, the words a desperate plea. "You're a healer, not a killer." "You're right," Dr. Winters said. And she lowered the rifle. A fraction of Vincent's arrogance returned. It was his final, fatal mistake. As he took a breath, ready to command what was left of his forces, a different sound filled the air. Not a gunshot, but a deep, guttural roar. From the depths of the mine behind him, a massive jaguar emerged, its golden eyes fixed on the man standing at the edge of its territory. It was a phantom, a spirit of the jungle he had sought to plunder. Vincent stumbled backward in shock, his foot catching on a root. His arms flailed, the fake pendant flying from his grasp. For a horrifying, beautiful second, he was suspended in air above the dark mouth of the sinkhole. Then he fell. His scream was swallowed by the darkness, ending abruptly with a distant, final thud. The jungle was silent again. Cordelia Sterling dropped her weapon, holding her hands up in surrender. The fight was over. Zara walked to the edge of the pit and looked down. There was only darkness. She picked up the fake pendant from where it had fallen in the dirt. Then she turned to Dr. Winters and pulled her into a fierce, silent embrace. They had both lost so much to the same monster. They were free. Drake climbed down from his perch and joined them, his hand finding Zara's. Carlos approached, his expression unreadable, as he stared into the abyss that had claimed his family's destroyer. "It's finished," Zara said. Carlos shook his head slowly. "No, Sabrina. It's just beginning." He gestured to the mine. "That is your birthright. Not just the diamonds, but the responsibility. The people who worked for our family, who were exploited by Hawthorne Syndicate, they look to you now." The weight of his words settled on her, not as a burden, but as a purpose. 6 months later, the boardroom of Vasquez Holdings was nothing like the polished marble of Whitmore Academy. It was all rich, dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the rebuilt mining town in the valley below, not a city skyline. The air smelled of coffee and old paper, not expensive cologne. Zara sat at the head of the table, the real heart of Vasquez pendant, now properly set and gleaming, resting openly against her charcoal gray blazer. She wasn't hiding anymore. The faces around the table were a mix of Carlos's trusted allies, lawyers, and community leaders. And Drake, sitting to her right, his leg brushing against hers under the table, a constant, steadying presence. "The transition is complete," the head lawyer said, closing a massive binder. "Hawthorne Pharmaceuticals has been dissolved, its assets liquidated and redistributed to the victims' fund as ordered by the courts. The Sterling Ashworth Syndicate is in disarray, its leaders awaiting trial. The Vasquez estate is officially yours, Miss Vasquez." Zara nodded. It had been a whirlwind of legal battles, fueled by the mountain of evidence her mother had hidden. But they had won. After the meeting, she and Drake walked out onto a terrace overlooking the valley. The afternoon sun warmed her face. "My mother would hate that boardroom," Zara said softly. "But she'd love what we're doing with the money. The hospital, the schools." "She'd love the woman you become," Drake said, taking her hand. "I know I do." He wasn't the polished prep school prince anymore. He was harder, wiser, his eyes holding the shadows of what they'd survived together. He'd testified against his father's empire, severing his last ties to the Hawthorne name and fortune. He had chosen her. Every day, he chose her. Later that night, in the quiet of the study, Carlos found her. He placed a small, worn journal on the desk in front of her. "I found this in the safe deposit box," he said. "It's your mother's. I thought you should have it." Zara opened the journal. The pages were filled with her mother's elegant handwriting, not just mining coordinates and financial records, but thoughts, fears, and hopes. Dreams for a daughter she hoped would never have to fight this war. On the last page, written just days before she died, was a single sentence. "The true heart of Vasquez was never a diamond. It is my daughter, and she is stronger than them all." Tears finally came, not of grief, but of peace. The story had found its ending. The crown had been claimed, not through bloodshed, but through strength. The revenge was sweet because it wasn't vengeance at all, it was justice, and it was redemption. As Zara looked out at the stars over the Colombian mountains, she felt a sense of wholeness she'd never known. She was Zara Vasquez, heiress, survivor, protector, and her story was only just beginning. What did this story teach you about the hidden strength inside you? About the legacies we inherit and the ones we choose to build for ourselves? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that will change how you see the world.